Hi everyone. This is my first time, so I need to figure out how to do this. I guess you're supposed to invite people. Well, we're telling more. Okay. So I'm gonna get started, and then as people join, if you have any questions, you can just put it in the comments because I know that this is gonna save as a video. And then, okay, so thank you so much for submitting some of your questions about your resume and your job search. And I'm going to answer the ones that I got via DMs and emails. If you have any other questions, though, feel free to put them in the comments, I guess, and then I can answer those as well as we are going forward. I don't intend to stay on for long. This is my first time on live. I'm really nervous, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so one of the first questions that I got via DM I thought was really good, and it asked about how do you discuss your entrepreneurial endeavors when you're looking for a job or on your resume. And this is something that obviously is very, near and dear to my heart because I'm an entrepreneur, but also I have a 9 to 5. And so I always talk to people about, I guess, prioritizing where you want to represent yourself on what platforms. So, for instance, if you are working a 9 to 5 and choose to continue to grow in your field, you might consider prioritizing LinkedIn for your professional career. And that's a decision, for example, that I did. You might also be someone who wants to be one streamlined brand. So you might put your business on your resume, your business on your LinkedIn, if it's closely intertwined and very similar. I think one thing that I often talk to clients about, though, is if you're like the CEO of a business, or if you consider yourself to be a director or what it is, consider the job title that you're labeling yourself as. Because particularly if you are a person of color, a Black woman, sometimes organizations can feel intimidated or threatened if you claim to be something and they don't want to take on that in their company. Another consideration I think you should take is just understanding that sometimes companies might feel like you don't have the time to dedicate towards what they want you to do if you're concentrated on your own side hustles and endeavors. So I think these are very important questions you have to ask yourself on as you're applying, to say what message is this going to send to the companies that I'm trying to work for, and can it potentially help or harm me? So that's the first question. The next question that we got was how long should your resume be? And it's interesting because generally I always talk about the 1 page resume because we know that recruiters are only looking at resumes for about 5 to 7 seconds. And so the idea and goal is for you to really grab their attention as soon as possible so that they can call you for a phone interview or in-person interview. However, there are many times where your resume should be longer than a page. It might be 2 or 3 pages, particularly if you are someone that's seeking a director position, an executive director position, because you have to show that, over the years you've consistently performed, that you have experience and knowledge in these areas, that you're able to fundraise, that you're able to garner partnerships with other people, and different things like that. So when considering the length of your resume, you want to make sure that the resume length matches the positions of which you're applying. If you're applying for an entry-level position, for example, it doesn't really make sense to have a 2 page resume because I know that there's ways that you can combine experiences, or some things might actually be outdated and don't need to be included at all. When we're applying for entry-level positions, though, we want to make sure that we're not just listing things just to have them on and to have this long experience. We don't want to provide redundant information, again, because the recruiter is only going to be tuned in for a couple of seconds. So we want to grab their attention, show that they were qualified, and then have them call us for an interview. The next question that we talked about is someone wanting to make a career change. So I want to make a career change, but I don't know if I'm quite qualified. And that is a very, very common question that clients have these days, particularly with, COVID-19 going on. So I would say the first step you should do is to really think about your work history in order to identify many of your transferable skill sets that you developed on your jobs in the past, and to see which fields align and require those same skill sets. For example, if you are someone who's been in the retail industry or hospitality, you have skills that in selling and upselling. You have the ability to foster relationships with clients, to really figure out and determine their needs. You have great customer service. If you were a manager, you might have the experience of managing people and helping to leverage their strengths to foster their development. So you really have to think about what have you learned and what are you really good at in the field that you're coming from. Then just think about, jot a list down of some of the things that you're interested in, some of the things that you've always seen yourself doing, job titles that might sound intriguing, because then you want to Google these job titles to see if you're really qualified or not. Sometimes the easiest thing about switching careers is sometimes a play on words. So for instance, if I'm leaving the field of education, I might talk a lot about my students or about my parents or about my families. But if I'm going into another field, instead of saying students and families, I might change that to say stakeholders or clients, because I want to speak the language of the company or of the field that I want to transition into. The next question is, who can I list as a reference? This is a juicy question. I think it's interesting, especially depending on your job history. So if obviously the best case scenario is for you to always, sever it, like leave ties from a workplace on a good note. You don't want to burn any bridges. That way you're able to reach out to past supervisors or managers for them to speak on your behalf when you're looking for new opportunities. However, that's not always the case, and sometimes people don't have the best interests at heart. So I would also think about what other senior staff members that you are familiar with, that know your work ethic, that can speak to your work ethic and your skill sets. It's really important, though, that whoever you list as your reference, that they're going to give you a good reference. You'd be surprised at the amount of people that list people as their references that don't think that they're a good worker. And that's not obviously going to help you get the job, so don't list them. So think critically, come up with 3 names of people who are in senior roles that can speak, again, to your work ethic and skill set, and then you're always set for that references. A good rule of thumb is to create a document with their name, position, email address, and phone number. That way, when it's requested from the companies, you can just forward that along and you're all set. Always just make sure that you give them a heads up that, hey, I'm applying for this job. They're asking for my references, so they might reach out to you. That way they're knowing to answer any unknown calls, because you don't want to miss out on an opportunity because your references aren't coming through for you. Okay, so that is the first 3 questions, or 4 questions. The next one asks about, how do you explain why you're leaving your job, particularly if you hate it? Yeah, this is real. Even though it's a real feeling, you should not tell this to your future employer. It's always about sugarcoating it and presenting it in the right way. So maybe you might say, I'm looking for additional opportunities to grow in my fields, and there's currently no growth available at the position that I'm at. Or I'm looking to challenge myself and develop new skill sets, and I really think that your company can help me do that. Whatever you say, don't badmouth your previous company. Don't say that your supervisor sucks, even if they do. Don't get into the nitty-gritty, because particularly if you're working within the same industry, it's small. People know people and people talk. So you don't want to be the person that's known as, looking for a new job and then talking bad on where you came from, because they think that you might do that to them as well, and it's not worth it. So yeah, always practice that answer while you're leaving your job, because that often comes up a lot. The next question is, should I include all past positions that I worked? This kind of relates to one of the questions we spoke about earlier, but you should really try to prioritize the work history that you provide. While it's great that you've been working and paying taxes all these years, it's not always necessary to talk about. Sometimes, though, if you're, sometimes you might be applying to a job that is not directly related to some of your positions in the past. For instance, if I'm applying to be a teacher, me working at McDonald's is not really directly related. If I have other more related experience, I would prioritize showing those first. And then if I had room or if I needed extra, work experience to not provide a gap, then I might include the McDonald's position in there. The goal is to curate a resume that is directly tailored to the job role that you're applying for. That means that all your work history and the accomplishments and descriptions listed below should relate to the position that you're applying for. That means, again, like the play on words, families versus stakeholders, thinking about making sure that the positions make sense, that is a trajectory, and it just doesn't seem like something random that you want to do. The next one is, how do I add numbers to my resume? That's a really good one. I think we actually have a video about that, or maybe I just recorded a video for February. I'm not sure. But it's important. You always want to quantify your resume as much as possible. So you should be thinking about, did you have the opportunity to manage people? If so, how many? Did you initiate any programming? If so, how many? Did you fundraise? How much? Just like put numbers as much as possible. So think about what you did, who you did it for, and how many people it impacted or affected. That's a really good and easy way to ease your way into the numbers. And then once you have some, you'll start thinking of other projects or accomplishments that you have that you can also slide in there as well. The next one is, how do I avoid job discrimination in the job search? Or age discrimination, sorry. So age discrimination is real. Obviously, it's illegal for companies to do it, but it still happens. Some tips that I often give my clients is, again, prioritizing the positions that you include in your resume. Depending on what level, entry level, mid-level, or senior level that you're applying for, you might not need to go that far back in your resume. I know for me, like, even though I'm not a victim of age discrimination often, I wouldn't go back more than 10 years of my job experience, even though I've been working for 10 plus years. I would only include probably the last 10 years is the max. I wouldn't go beyond that unless, again, I'm applying for a director's role to show that, I have a track record over an extended period of time. Something else that I tell clients is, if you have a Yahoo, you should consider switching to a Gmail, because that's something that is a little trigger that you might be a little bit older. And then also your graduation date from college. Some people choose to include it. Some people choose not to include it. It doesn't really matter, but some people just like to take it off just in case. While we're on the topic of discrimination, though, something else you should consider doing is taking your address off of your resume. For one, it's a safety concern. You put your resume on tons of job boards. There's tons of crazy people out here, and you don't want to put your whole address and then somebody's at your door. We don't want that. So a best practice these days is to take off your full address and to only include your city and state. Some people also include zip code. I don't really think it matters, but again, when we're thinking about discrimination, some people want to prevent companies from looking up their housing in the neighborhoods that they live in, just in case it might count against them on the job. So that's just something that you want to consider when thinking about discrimination in the job search. Okay, the next question is, I got the interview, but I never heard back. What should I do now? Yeah, so job ghosting is definitely a thing. It's unfortunate, but it happens sometimes. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's them. There's really no clear answer to that. But I encourage all my clients to do a post-interview reflection. And actually, we have a free digital product on our website that kind of guides you through the different parts of the reflection process so that you can evaluate yourself and how you performed. So you want to think about, were you early and prepared and on time? Were you asking and showing interest in the position by asking questions? Were you able to answer their questions with confidence? Were you able to provide examples and really sell and market yourself as the best candidate for the position? So whether you get you hear back about the interview, getting a job or not, you should always think about what you can do to improve so that way your next interview is even better. The best way to really prepare for an interview is to practice and then to use the information that you got from previous ones and apply it going forward. The next question is, I am deciding between jobs. What should I do? That is a great position to be in. And I think it's obviously great because you're looking for a job and you got a couple. So when deciding between jobs, you should ask yourself some critical questions about what does work-life balance look like at this position? What are the benefits, obviously? What's the commute time looking like in a, post-COVID world where we have to commute back into the office? Also, what are the opportunities for growth? Do they offer tuition reimbursement? Do I have the opportunity to manage people, to develop more additional skill sets? Like, the list can go on and on. We also have another, a guide that can help you think about what you should be asking yourselves when you're taking on a new position. And I think something else, let's say you have 2 positions and then you're waiting to hear back from a third one. You should always reach out to the jobs and say that, you want to make the most informed choice and to ask them to extend the timeline for when you can give them an answer. And this allows you to really compare and contrast the different job opportunities that you have to ensure that you're making the one that is best for yourself, your family, and your career. And then the last question for tonight is, I want something different, but I'm not sure what or where I should start. So this is great because this is another common question amongst clients these days. And we offer something called the DISC assessment, which it definitely assesses your needs and motivations in the workplace to really help you narrow in on the type of job that you want. I would also encourage you to read a blog that we posted a couple of months ago about determining what you need versus what you want. So it requires you to ask questions such as, do you enjoy working with other people? Do you like to work in a team? What else is on there? It's a whole bunch of questions, essentially. Diving into your work style and what is best for you. Then I would result back to what we talked about a little bit early on about just thinking about your interests and the things that you like to do and the things that you didn't like to do in your previous job so that we can find a position that, is more tailored and aligned to what you're interested in doing next. So that's all my questions. If you are interested, if you have more questions, feel free to obviously DM or email me at proresumetailor@gmail.com. If you visit our website, proresumetailor.com, you can also schedule a free consultation where we can spend about 10 or 15 minutes just discussing what it is that you need and how we can help you, or if we can help you, if that would be helpful and of support to you. So, and that's my time for tonight. Thank you so much for you all that has come in and left and show some love. I appreciate it. Have a good night.